Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, in which I look at the films which might have played a role in shaping those of us who are members of the MTV generation. After directing a series of controversial and attention-grabbing films in his native Netherlands, Paul Verhoeven became a Hollywood powerhouse in the late 80s and early 90s with films like Total Recall, Starship Troopers, Basic Instinct, and yes, even Showgirls, based on the success of his 1987 dystopian satire RoboCop. RoboCop was written by music video director Michael Miner and Edward Neumeier, and it made immediate waves for its jaw-dropping levels of violence. At the request of the MPAA, RoboCop was edited 8 times before its release to avoid receiving an X rating. While RoboCop has all the surface trappings of a dumb, violent action film, there's a lot going on at its core. We open in Detroit, in what seems to be the near future, with a media break news report. Local anchors Jesse Perkins and Casey Wong cheerfully recount grim global headlines about terrible events like dangerous nuclear standoffs, as well as the exploits of a local crime boss named Clarence Boddicker, who is linked to the murders of 31 police officers. We also learn that the Detroit Metropolitan Police Department is funded by a powerful corporation called OCP, Omni Consumer Products. The president of OCP is Dick Jones, played by Ronny Cox, whom we recently saw in Vision Quest. Jesse Perkins is played by longtime Entertainment Tonight reporter Lisa Gibbons, while Casey Wong is played by local Los Angeles anchor Mario Mikado, whom we saw briefly in St. Elmo's Fire. These media breaks hosted by Wong and Perkins will appear at deliberately jarring intervals throughout the film, and the global news will just get worse and worse as the film goes on. The media breaks are always accompanied by bizarre and trashy commercials for products like a family-friendly board game called Nukem, in which players declare nuclear war on each other. The future depicted in RoboCop is crass and brainless, and everyone is utterly desensitized to violence. Wong and Perkins respond to horrific news stories with glib platitudes and plastic smiles. In the Metro West Police Precinct, a new transfer from Metro South, Officer Murphy reports for duty to Sergeant Reed, who is played by blaxploitation star Robert Doakey. Murphy is played by Peter Weller, whom we saw not too many episodes back in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. In the locker room, the Metro West cops complain about their dangerous jobs. Morale is low because so many cops have been murdered on duty. Murphy meets his new partner, a tough cop named Lewis. Lewis is played by Nancy Allen, who had juicy roles in several films directed by her one-time husband, Brian De Palma, including Carrie, Dressed to Kill, and Blowout. At OCP, the top executives assemble in the boardroom to discuss the planned construction of Delta City, a shiny new privately owned city scheduled to replace old Detroit. OCP has invested heavily in running the police department to speed along the destruction of Detroit and the construction of Delta City. This is the pet project of the old man, the chairman of OCP, who is played by Irish-born actor Dan O'Herlihy, whose career spanned over half a century. Of particular interest to Gen Xers, he played the alien Grig in The Last Starfighter and Andrew Packard on Twin Peaks. Dick Jones introduces the executives to the future of law enforcement, Ed.29, an armed and armored robot. During a demonstration, Ed.29 malfunctions and riddles a young executive with bullets. It's an incredibly brutal killing, and the other executives respond pretty callously to this burst of extreme violence right in front of them. They're grossed out and a bit horrified, but not nearly horrified enough. The old man is angry about this setback to the Ed.209 program. One of the executives, an ambitious young upstart named Morton, seizes the opportunity to sell the old man on his idea for a human-robot-cop hybrid named RoboCop. Morton is played by the late Miguel Ferrer, son of screen legends Jose Ferrer and Rosemary Clooney. Among his many noteworthy roles, he played the gloriously obnoxious FBI agent Albert Rosenfield on Twin Peaks. Morton's associate Johnson is played by Felton Perry, who is ubiquitous in roles in film and television throughout the 70s and 80s. You may recognize him from 1973's Magnum Force or from the late 80s ABC series Hooperman. Murphy and Lewis respond to an armed robbery orchestrated by the crime boss, Boddicker. Boddicker is played by Kurtwood Smith, probably best known for that 70s show, though he's appeared in a little bit of everything over his long career. Murphy and Lewis trail the culprits to an abandoned steel mill. Murphy is ambushed and shot several times before being shot in the head by Boddicker. OCP uses Murphy's corpse as the test subject for Morton's brainchild. They remove his limbs and fit him out with robotic parts, then transform him into RoboCop, a super efficient cop who is more robot than human. Morton and Johnson introduce RoboCop to Sergeant Reed and the officers of the West Precinct. RoboCop has no free will and no memory of his previous life as Murphy. He's been programmed with 3 prime directives: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. We see that he has a classified 4th directive, which is not revealed at this time. Throughout the film, there are more media breaks with Wong and Perkins, and more tacky commercials, and more more glimpses of what entertainment looks like in this terrible future. There's a running bit about a popular television show featuring a mustachioed man getting caught in various crudely sexualized situations who is always dropping the catchphrase, "I'd buy that for $1," to the delight of viewers. After RoboCop came out, that became a popular catchphrase, though it really doesn't mean anything by itself. In RoboCop, it's just meant to show the mindless nature of the media and pop culture that saturates this broken and violent society. On patrol, RoboCop interrupts a robbery at a liquor store and easily apprehends the suspect. He stops a pair of knife-wielding thugs from harassing a woman. He also intervenes and resolves a hostage situation in which a city councilman is holding the mayor hostage. Due to the smash success of RoboCop, Morton is promoted to OCP vice president. Dick Jones, seething with rage over the failure of Ed.29, overhears Morton trash-talking him in the men's room, and he takes it very, very personally. RoboCop, meanwhile, begins to glitch as fragmented memories of his previous life as Murphy begin to return to him. He storms out of the precinct laboratory where he's kept when he's not on duty. Lewis follows him and tries her best to help him remember his previous life, but is unsuccessful. A gas station is robbed by Emil, one of Boddicker's henchmen. Emil is played by Paul McCrane, who was Montgomery in the 1980 film Fame. RoboCop intervenes, and Emil recognizes him as the late Officer Murphy. As Murphy's memories once again begin to return, Emil blows up the gas station. RoboCop accesses the computer system at the precinct. He pulls up the file on Officer Murphy and learns he was killed in the line of duty. He visits his empty and abandoned home in a nice suburban neighborhood and is flooded with memories of his wife and young son. With his memories mostly back, RoboCop hunts down Boddicker's henchman Leon Nash at a glitzy nightclub. Nash is played by Ray Wise, Leland Palmer on Twin Peaks. The ties between RoboCop and Twin Peaks are surprisingly robust. RoboCop forces Leon to divulge Boddicker's whereabouts. Morton, who is snorting a lot of blow and partying with a couple of floozies, is interrupted at home by Boddicker. Boddicker shoots him in the leg and shows him a video from Dick Jones, who smugly tells him that this is his revenge. Boddicker uses a grenade to blow Morton to smithereens. RoboCop bursts into a cocaine manufacturing lab where Boddicker is conducting business and arrests him. In the OCP corporate suite, RoboCop tries to arrest Dick Jones for conspiring with Boddicker. He can't do it because his top-secret Directive 4 kicks in. RoboCop has been programmed to be unable to arrest any senior OCP executive. Dick Jones sends in Ed.29 to kill RoboCop. A wounded RoboCop manages to escape after Ed.29 is thwarted by stairs. The police ambush RoboCop, but Lewis gets him to safety and hides him in the abandoned steel mill. Now out on bail, Boddicker visits Dick Jones, who orders him to destroy RoboCop to cover up their mutual involvement in Morton's murder. In the steel mill, RoboCop conducts repairs on himself and removes his helmet, revealing Murphy's original face, though not his original head. Lewis tells him his wife and son moved out of Detroit after Murphy's death to start a new life. Armed with high-tech OCP weapons from Dick Jones, Boddicker and his thugs descend on the steel mill to kill RoboCop. Many explosions, car crashes, impalements, and terrible mishaps involving tanks of toxic waste later, RoboCop manages to kill Boddicker. Lewis is injured in the melee but survives. Back at OCP, RoboCop bursts into the boardroom and shows the old man video of Dick Jones confessing to Morton's murder. The old man fires Dick Jones. As Directive 4 no longer applies, RoboCop is able to attack him, and Dick Jones tumbles out a window to his death. The old man asks RoboCop's name, and he replies that his name is Murphy. Describing the bare-bones plot of RoboCop makes it sound as if it's going to be a dumb 80s B-movie. I didn't see it when it was first released in theaters, because while I have always loved dumb 80s B-movies, it didn't quite sound like my kind of thing. To this day, if I'm going to watch something about killer robots, I'd prefer it if the robots looked like sexy and lethal humans instead of like blocky hunks of metal that blow things up real good. But RoboCop has a great deal going for it, even for viewers who aren't necessarily into trigger-happy robots with really big guns. RoboCop is a pointed satire of American society in the 1980s, and many of its points seem even sharper today. In RoboCop, the police are controlled by a private company, which uses them to advance its own interests. The OCP executives are looking to raise trouble-plagued and impoverished Detroit to the ground to build Delta City on its ruins, and they're using the police to help them do it while they themselves remain above the law. OCP has risen to power by privatizing fields that were traditionally considered non-profits, such as hospitals, prisons, law enforcement, space exploration, and the military. The idea of private companies wielding power in those areas was almost farcical in 1987, but seems much less so in 2020, where we have normalized privatized prisons, private space flights, private military contractors, and yes, private police agencies. RoboCop is a bleakly and weirdly funny film. The media breaks and the fake commercials fall just on the right side of absurdity, and the violence is so jarring and so over the top that it seems designed to provoke us into shocked laughter. It's a safe bet that our amusement at the violence was deliberately engineered by Verhoeven to drive his point home about how Americans have become desensitized to violence. He wants us to find the violence entertaining, but he also wants us to stop and think about why. The critical and commercial success of RoboCop ensured a sequel, 1990's RoboCop 2, which starred Weller and Allen and featured the same writing team, but was directed by veteran director Irvin Kershner. For 1993's RoboCop 3, Weller was replaced by actor Robert Burke. There was also a 2014 reboot of the franchise, plus a 1994 Canadian television series that aired in syndication in the US. And there was a 1988 animated series, which is really bizarre because RoboCop is not a film for kids. I don't mean that because it's a very violent film or because it has some sexualized content, but because it's a very adult film built upon some weighty themes, and that part's probably going to be lost on most kids. But I don't really know. I've never watched the RoboCop cartoon, and maybe it did a brilliant job of converting the film's dark satire and sophisticated themes of the dangers of unchecked corporate influence and desensitization to violence into a format that was palatable for 8 to 12-year-olds. Or maybe it just existed to help sell RoboCop-branded action figures. I hasten to add that some of my favorite 80s cartoons existed just to sell toys. I'm just pointing out that a RoboCop cartoon seems like exactly the sort of thing Paul Verhoeven wanted to warn us about in his film. RoboCop's script is good. The dialogue is memorable. The villains, from Miguel Ferrer's Morton to Kurtwood Smith's Boddicker to Ronny Cox's Dick Jones, are vividly loathsome. RoboCop, well played by Weller, comes across as a confused and lost soul struggling to regain his humanity when trapped inside a metal prison. This isn't a heartwarming film by any definition. In fact, it's quite cold and prickly. But in the middle of all of the explosions and bloodshed, there's a certain tragic poignancy to the character of RoboCop. Next time, Bret Easton Ellis's soulless and depraved rich kids get the Hollywood treatment in 1987's Less Than Zero. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope to see you then.